Hi, and welcome to the Danish Way of Parenting, a proven approach to raising emotionally secure, resilient, and happy kids. Are you wearing yourself out trying to come up with new and better ways of being a mom or dad? Or do you feel squashed by social expectations and pressure to do the right thing for your kids? Or are you worried whether your child will be successful and be able to handle life's ups and downs? Or maybe you feel like the more you try, the more you lose connection with your kids. Do you want to do things differently than your parents did, but you just don't know how? These are all very valid concerns for parents nowadays. The Danish Way of Parenting has been quoted as a movement that might just change the country, and I know that it will have an impact on the way you perceive your kids and the way you interact with them in the future. Here's what it does for the Danes and what it can do for your kids if implemented. Your kids will become resilient to bullying and group pressure. They'll be self-confident, generally happy, and have empathy and compassion for others, which makes them good friends and great team players as well. They'll know how to follow their own guidance and have a high probability of leading successful lives with less anxiety or depression. And last but not least, with a lifelong, strong connection with you. So let me walk you through how it's done in Denmark. And if you stay to the end of the webinar, I'll have a gift for you. So why Denmark? Denmark has been voted the happiest country in the world for over 40 years in a row now. There are many reasons why, but the Danish parenting accounts for a large part of it. The Danish Way of Parenting was formatted into a parenting strategy by an American mom and a Danish therapist, and it's the secret sauce recipe of Danish parenting. It's passed down from family to family in Denmark and is now available to you. And in case you're wondering who the heck I am to be presenting this to you, my name is Sofie. I'm a pediatric nurse, mother of 2 teenagers, children's book author, traveler, speaker, and a life coach. And I grew up in Denmark and have lived in the US for the last 19 years. When learning about the Danish Way of Parenting, all the feelings of being and feeling different in my parenting approach finally made sense to me. I raised my kids in the US, but come to find out largely the Danish way. So what did you want to be when you grew up? The funny thing is that when I was in high school in Denmark and was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said I wanted to be happy. And here I am presenting a way for you to raise happy and resilient kids who turn out to be happy and resilient adults, raising happy and resilient kids. Happiness can be defined as a sense of well-being, joy, and contentment. Since the pursuit of happiness is built into the American Constitution, let's explore happiness for a bit. We all have intrinsic beliefs about what the right way to parent is. It's ingrained into our society and culture, and it's impossible to see objectively. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm offering you a new pair of lenses that can help you raise happy, secure, and resilient kids if applied. There's an incredible amount of self-awareness involved in being a good parent. It requires us to look at what we do when we're tired and stressed and stretched to our limits. Default settings are inherited from our parents like a hard drive on your computer. And it's where we go automatically in our parenting, and especially when we're stressed. Increasing your self-awareness about making conscious decisions in your actions and reactions is the first step toward powerful changes in you and your child's life. Once there, you can decide what you want to change and what you would like to incorporate from the Danish Way of Parenting. It takes practice, patience, and continued awareness to change your default settings, but the outcome is well worth the effort. Let's look at the different strategies that Danes use to raise their kids. The Danish Way of Parenting approach can be divided into 6 pillars: free play, authenticity, reframing, empathy, no ultimatums, and togetherness, or hygge as the Danes calls it. Let's dive into these concepts a little bit more. A common misunderstanding among parents today is that if we just let our kids play, they miss out on valuable time to develop in learning new skills. I bet you feel an unspoken pressure to organize activities for your kids and often feel guilty if you just let them play. You feel like a better parent if you provide them with input, challenges, and learning opportunities, and you feel proud of their accomplishment when they come in form of medals, good grades, playing an instrument, and so on. But the thing is, play is not absence of learning, it is learning. If your child's always performing in order to obtain something like good grades, awards, and praise, they don't develop their inner drive. They need space and trust to master things on their own and solve their own problems. Play provides for your child to automatically learn at their own pace, where they're in control of how fast to develop new skills. You most likely think that you can help by pushing a little, but pulling or pushing too much is actually counterproductive. Kids need to be in control of their own development at their own speed. So it's best that you meet your child where they feel secure trying a new skill and then challenge and invite them to go further. This is how self-reliance and self-esteem is developed. Developing a strong inner guidance is resilience and has been proven to be one of the most important factors in predicting success in adulthood. Whatever your child might encounter, they'll know that they'll be able to handle it. They'll be better at regulating their emotions and would be less prone to anxiety and depression. Other skills developed through play is problem-solving skills, empathy, how to negotiate and how to deal with anger, among various other social skills learned. Resilience isn't cultivated by avoiding stress, but by learning how to tame it, like in play. If you can relate to maybe sometimes being an overprotective parent to attempt to help your child and build their confidence, remember that it's like building a nice house with little foundation. It's not sustainable for your child. Your child has to develop self-esteem by trials and challenges. That's why play is actually crucial in learning how to cope with stress for kids. Parenting with authenticity means understanding and accepting all emotions and feelings and sharing them, good or bad. Danes believe that tragedies and upsetting events are just as important to talk about as the happy stuff. We learn more about character from suffering than from success, and we develop a greater respect and empathy for humanity through our struggles. If you teach your child to recognize their feelings, good or bad, and acting in a way that's consistent with their values, their challenges and rough patches in life won't topple them. They'll know how to recognize their own limits and respect them. Having an inner compass and authentic self-esteem based on values helps children be resistant to external pressures. Being able to follow your inner compass also allows for an inspired life full of meaning and passion. As a parent, being a role model of emotional health is powerful parenting. If you start to embrace and accept all your range of emotions, you will do the same for your child. It's only when we try to hide the bad emotions that they come out as judgment and criticism and shaming, which can be very harmful for children. Our judgments become who they are. Your child needs emotional honesty from you, not perfection. Your child's an incredible lie detector and will feel unstable if you're fake. So try to be honest on a developmentally appropriate level. Self-deception can cause your child to make choices based on external influences like wanting social status or having a big house or great car, good grades. That might bring success by some standards, but it makes your child more susceptible to stress and anxiety, and it does not provide for developing internal happiness and resilience. Authentic praise means praising achievements and not accomplishments. So praise the effort, not the results. Not overpraising helps your child realize why they're proud of what they did and will build on that feeling of being able to master a skill. Always telling your child how great they are, regardless, will not lead to the highest self-esteem, whereas helping your child realize what they're great at and being acknowledged for it does. Children who have been acknowledged for their efforts rather than for their intelligence have been raised in what is called a growth mindset. Because these children understand that intelligence isn't set, they continue to learn and their intelligence grows. These children will increase their efforts in the face of failure and look for new learning strategies rather than giving up. Telling kids how smart they are may boost their confidence, but in the face of difficulty, it actually makes them less confident. People with growth mindset are more desirable in businesses also because they're better at teamwork and resolving challenges without getting stressed. So next time your child comes home with good grades, you can consider praising all their efforts regardless of their grade, or praising their character grades in elementary school versus the academic grades. Something you can learn from the Danes is how to be in touch with reality while focusing on the positive angles. Danes are what is called realistic optimists, which is like taking off your old glasses and finding alternative storylines. Since what we perceive as the truth feel like the truth, practicing realistic optimism decreases anxiety and promotes well-being. What I used to tell my kids is, think what makes you feel good. Since our reality is created in the language that we use, we can use language to create a shift in perception and therefore also in the way that we feel, which is why reframing is one of the cornerstones of resilience. When we can control how we perceive a situation, we can also control how we feel about the situation and therefore how we master the situation. By helping your child reframe situations to a more positive angle early on, it becomes a lifelong skill they don't even have to think about later on in life, but do automatically. An example of reframing is this little Pooh quote. As far as helping your child train their ability to find a positive angle, it's equally important for you not to use any limiting language with your child or indicate how your child should do or feel in various situations or label their behavior. If you do, the result is that they'll begin to build coping strategies based on not trusting their own abilities facing challenges. Kids generally start to identify with and live up to the labels that we give them, such as when we call them selfish, antisocial, not academic, and so on. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Limiting language such as she hates reading or she's so picky teaches your child that their behavior is their identity. Instead, you could say things like, they're a child that doesn't feel like reading, but they like this better, or they're a child that just prefers certain foods. If you hold on to the good in your child by separating the action from your child's worth, you teach them that you love them even when they misbehave. Helping your child reframe situations and pay attention to how you label your child is important because your outer voice becomes their inner voice their entire life. Empathy is the ability to recognize and understand the feelings of others. It is being able to walk in others' shoes. Since the 1980s, there's been a decrease in the capability of showing empathy among young people in the United States and an increase in the characteristics of narcissism. So it seems that America is in need of a severe empathy intervention. I bet you've felt the general tendency for competition and striving to be number one. It's a part of what defines being an American. You might also be able to recognize that motherhood or fatherhood has become more and more competitive as well, where you feel less and less inclined to share your vulnerability with the worry of being judged or rejected. This one-upmanship leads to superficial relationships where we in turn will judge other parents or kids to feel more superior ourselves. But the cruel irony is that we would actually feel a lot better if we were able to be more open and vulnerable in all our relationships. We're all wired for empathy. It's not a luxury for human beings, it's a necessity. We survive not because we have claws or fangs, but because we can communicate and collaborate. In the end, teaching your child empathy actually helps facilitate their connection to other kids. It is necessary for parents to be the primary example of empathy because children will mirror their parents, meaning they'll do what we do, not what we say. You can do this by acknowledging all of your child's emotions without judgment, as best possible you can, and discuss the root of the problem with your child at an age-appropriate level. It's great if you can share vulnerable stories from your own life at an age-appropriate level as well, of course. This also means that it's important not to be too overprotective or managing of your child's emotional life. If you're a parent that are afraid of letting your child feel unpleasant emotions, you will be overly accommodating to avoid conflict and fulfill your child's every wish. Additionally, you might hide irrational or emotional reactions to protect your child. Unfortunately, these behaviors will just hinder your child's ability to read emotions in others, and your child will be more prone to anxiety and depression and even narcissistic behavior. If you are a parent that by default tend to tell your child how to feel or behave, your child will try to please you and be less inclined to recognize what they actually feel and will not develop in the same way as those children who are allowed to recognize and express full range of emotions. Instead, they become disconnected from who they really are and what they feel. And how can we know what we want or who we are when we don't really know how we feel? When it comes to teaching your child to practice empathy, you can start out by pointing out the good in other children and try to explain the behavior and why they might have acted in an unpleasant way to your child. Try to help your child see other children's behavior as merely affected by circumstance rather than labeling the child as mean, selfish, or obnoxious. For example, if my kids came home and told me of a bullying situation, I would listen and acknowledge their feelings and proceed to ask why they think the child acted that way. At our house, there was a mutual understanding among me and my kids that the bully was probably having a hard time at home somehow. It became more about the bully and less about my kids, and that felt way more empowering for my children. It's also important to teach your child that you, as their parent, have empathy and compassion for them as well, of course, understanding how they feel and what their needs are. This will give them the tools to also truly be empathetic towards others. As a teenager, your child will have an easier time standing up to peer pressure and stand up for what is right if they've been open and sharing about their feelings from early on. The more empathy we can instill in our kids, the less likely they are to engage in bullying behavior, and they'll have an increased capacity to forgive and have better relationships and social connections. This is a part of the happiness and well-being that Danes are so famous for. The reason why ultimatums are discouraged in the Danish way of parenting is because they usually do not involve helping the child understand why they may or may not do something, which is much more empowering for the child. Also, when we resort to ultimatums in order to get our kids to listen or behave, it often ends up with yelling, threats, or physical punishment. There are 4 different styles of parenting. The default style of parenting you have is normally the way you were parented as well, and therefore how you parent your children when on autopilot. If your default is the authoritarian parenting style, you will tend to set demands to your child, but not be very responsive to conversations about the demands. You'll be requiring high standards and want obedience. As a result, your child will often do well in school, but sometimes suffer from low self-esteem, depression, and poor social skills. Children that are not involved in the decision process also tend to rebel often. If you are an authoritative parent, on the other hand, you are demanding but also responsive to your child. You set high standards, but are supportive in your discipline. The Danish Way of Parenting fall under this type of parenting style, which normally results in socially and intellectually competent children. If you're a very permissive parent, you are normally highly responsive, but not very demanding of a certain behavior from your child. Because your child is not getting support in form of boundaries, they instead depend on self-regulation. And as a result, your child might often have problems in school and with their behavior in general. Of course, children of very unevolved parents do the most poorly in all areas. Even today, physical punishment is widely used in the US. Although it might be effective in the short term, spanking can actually wreak havoc on children's long-term development. Children learn to listen because they're afraid, and power struggles create distance and hostility instead of closeness and trust. Since physical punishment can affect the areas of the brain involved in emotion and stress regulation, it's been linked to mental health problems like depression, anxiety, and drug and alcohol use later on in life. Kids who were disciplined with physical punishment will often have a low self-esteem and can be aggressive because the punishment makes them feel devalued. And they learn to follow guidance out of fear instead of their true inner guidance. A very important cornerstone of the Danish way of parenting is that the Danes see children as intrinsically good and react to them accordingly. This makes the parenting style very democratic, but with rules and guidelines and responsiveness to children's questions about the rules and guidelines. In Denmark, for example, the terrible twos is called the boundary age. The reason being is that Danes don't see their toddlers as bad, but only with an expected behavior of trying boundaries to learn about their environment. It is vital that you set age-appropriate expectations to your child. Every age has a theme of what can be expected from it. Children are not small adults. If you see your child as intrinsically good, it's also easier to let some power struggles go. Kids are testing things for themselves all the time. If it becomes too much of a power game every day, everyone loses and life becomes more stressful than it needs to be. You have to be consistent, but you don't have to raise soldiers. Although easier said than done, try not to worry about what others think of your parenting. Being understanding and curious rather than angry with your child is a good place to start. One of the top predictors of well-being and happiness is quality time with friends and family. Being in the moment with the ones we love and choosing to enjoy the most important, meaningful family moments of our lives and respecting them as important is what Danes call hygge. It is getting together for an uninterrupted time without any agenda and leaving space for everyone to be who they are. By leaving the drama at the door and sacrificing your individual needs and desires to make a family gathering more pleasant, you will foster a deep sense of connectedness among you and your kids that gives your lives meaning and purpose. It's quite different from the individualistic nature of American identity that was built on the philosophy of self-reliance and glorifying individual achievements and hard work that's something to strive for. You've most likely tried to raise your children to be the star or the winner. It's hard to resist. The US actually shown to have the highest level of individualism in the world. But when we substitute the we for the I, even illness becomes wellness. Seeing the family as a team also fosters a deep sense of belonging, and when given space for vulnerability, it will lessen the stress load and better your health. People with poor social connections have an average of 50% higher odds of dying early, and the immune system of people with lots of friends simply work better. If we are all willing to contribute to creating a cozy time together, it dramatically improves family get-togethers, which in turn dramatically affects our well-being and happiness. So, if you got excited and intrigued by learning about this revolutionary and simple parenting method and would like to learn more about how to live the principles with your kids or dive into that a little bit more, I have a gift for you. I am offering a free 1-hour breakthrough session where you can get crystal clear on what's possible for you and your child in creating powerful changes in your family life. You will discover the number one thing that's preventing your child from being the best version of themselves. You'll identify some simple first steps you can implement right away for lasting positive change. And you will leave the session with confidence and clarity of knowing the big picture of what needs to change in order for you to raise your most confident and happy children the Danish way. So, if you really think that this is something that could really do wonders for your family and for your child, click the link below to schedule a free Happy Confident Child breakthrough session. I look forward to connecting with you, and the link is happyconfidentchild.com. So I hope this was really beneficial for you, and if you're interested in connecting, click the link and schedule a session with me. Thank you.